Let's talk about buying property in Spain. The process is straightforward if you know the right steps and work with the right professionals. I'm Simon from Hackett Estates, and after 20 years buying, selling and developing property across southern Spain, I can help you walk through exactly how this works and how to protect yourself. Firstly, you can't buy property without an NIE, your tax identification number. For this, we've covered this in previous videos, but you need to apply at a Spanish consulate in the US or in Spain via a power of attorney through a lawyer. This you need to allow about 2 to 8 weeks. This is a really important first step, don't skip it. So next you need 2 key professionals, a buyer's agent who represents your interest and not the seller's. So that's someone who knows the local market, speaks fluent English and a bit of Spanish and guides you through the entire process. You also need an independent lawyer, separate from your agent and the seller. Your lawyer reviews all the contracts, conducts the due diligence on the property that you may want to buy and protects you legally. Never skip the lawyer. This is non-negotiable. Spanish property law is very different than US law, so you need expert protection. In terms of fees, legal fees are about typically 1% of the purchase price, which is a small investment for massive protection. Step 3 is about due diligence, which your lawyer will help you conduct. They will verify the seller actually owns the property through title checks. They'll check for liens, debts or mortgages, and they'll confirm that the property boundaries actually match the deed. They'll review building permits and check for illegal construction, and they'll verify that community fees, if you're living in an urbanisation, are current and there are no legal disputes. And finally, they'll check property tax payments are up to date. Red flags that they'll watch for and that you need to watch for: illegal construction, unpaid community fees, contested ownerships, or zoning violations, but all avoidable with the right legal help. So what's the timeline for due diligence? About 2 to 4 weeks. And this step is super important as it protects you from expensive surprises down the road. So once you've found your dream home, what comes next? You need to make the offer. So you make the offer through your agent, negotiate the price. You can include furniture often, and the completion date. When you agree on terms, a reservation contract will be prepared, which you have to sign and pay a small fee, normally about 1% of the property value, and this takes the property off the market. It locks in the agreed price and gives you time to complete the due diligence that your lawyer needs to complete, and that's about 2 to 4 weeks, hopefully quicker. If you back out, you will lose the deposit, but if the seller backs out, they have to return it and sometimes double what you put down. So once the due diligence is complete and you're committed, you sign a private purchase contract, which in Spanish is called the arras. This is a legally binding agreement setting the purchase price, completion date and all the terms. And at this point you pay about 10% of the deposit as a deposit at signing. Both parties are now committed. If you back out, you lose that 10% deposit. But if the seller backs out, they must return the deposit and often double, so up to about 20%. So that gives you really good security at this point. The timeline for this normally happens between about 2 to 4 weeks of the reservation contract. So the final step is the completion day, and this is where the ownership of the property officially transfers to you. You'll meet at the notary's office with your lawyer. The notary reads the deed aloud in Spanish law, and your lawyer can be there to translate that for you. You and the seller and a witness sign. You pay the remaining balance, which the remaining 90% of the purchase price, plus all of the fees and taxes. After this, the notary registers the deed within the land registry, so the property is yours and you have the keys. The timeline of this is about 6 to 8 weeks after the arras contract or as agreed. Sometimes the process can take as little as a month, sometimes 2 to 3 months. It depends how quickly you can both move. So you need to allow for about 9 to 10% of the purchase price in regards to costs and taxes. Transfer tax varies by region, but in Andalusia it's 7%. This is paid by the buyer. Notary fees, about 600 to 1,500 euros, depending. Land registry fees, about 400 to 800 euros. Legal fees, about 1% of the purchase price plus VAT, and a gestoria, if you need their support, about 300 to 600 euros. So on a €500,000 property, expect a total cost of about 50 to 55,000 euros, including tax and fees. So for a new construction, you'll pay 10% VAT instead of transfer tax. So, can Americans get mortgages in Spain? Yes, but with conditions. Spanish banks prefer non-residents to provide about 30 to 40% as a down payment. They'll lend about 60-70% of the loan to value. Interest rates here currently range from about 2.5 to 5%, with terms typically from about 15 to 25 years. To get this, you'll need extensive documentation, bank statements, tax returns, employment contracts, and proof of assets. But there are advisors who can help you with this. Many Americans find paying cash or using US-based financing simple and fast as well, where you already have those relationships. So the timeline from offer to completion is typically 8 to 12 weeks, faster if all parties are motivated, and slower if mortgages or legal issues crop up. Buying in Spain, however, is transparent, legally protected, and relatively straightforward if you have the right team. Never go alone, hire a buyer's agent and an independent lawyer. The cost is minimal compared to the protection that they'll provide. In our final video, I'll introduce Hackett Estates and show you how we can help American families navigate this entire journey from the first inquiry to settled life in Spain. But remember, all of this is available in much more detail in our free guide, The American's Guide to Relocating to Spain. And you can download it using the link you can find in the description below. It's everything that you need to know in one place.